So here are the ones to check. 6740, 8820, 8660.
Yeah, let's go up to like the next straw and see.
So right now I'm just constantly sitting on this one radio collar, 8880, and she's kind of coming in and out, and as my field of view opens up here, I'm hoping the signal will get stronger. Hell's Canyon is a great place to study wild sheep for a couple of different reasons. There are a bunch of real steep cliffs. We've got these great open grazing meadows.
I mean, she's behind the...
Oh, she's got me right there. In the fall, the thing that we're most interested in is their rut, which is their period of mating. There is a well-established dominance hierarchy among the rams. It's very intense. So this kind of ties directly to the spring stuff where we're trying to understand lamb survival.
There's a lamb, 1508's lamb, right?
Yeah, she looks great to me.
She does. She got the little lamb smile.
Yeah.
The bighorn sheep, I mean, to me, one of the most beautiful things there is.
Bighorn sheep are icons of the West, of the wild. They're magnificent creatures.
They're amazing. Never falling, jumping up from rock to rock, jumping up sheer cliffs.
These animals are really smart, and they've been here a long time. 400 years ago, there were probably in excess of 1 million bighorns.
Bighorn sheep used to be ubiquitous in this part of the world until Europeans came and brought domestic sheep.
By the 1920s, many of the historic bighorn herds were gone.
The combination of unregulated hunting as well as diseases that were transmitted to bighorns from domestic sheep had tremendous impact on the bighorn sheep.
Around 1950, people really started focusing on how poor the populations of bighorn sheep were and how they could maybe increase them by reintroducing bighorn sheep back into these ranges from which they'd been extirpated. A lot of these populations started reproducing and coming back and increasing in their numbers.
Having enough habitat for wild sheep is a concern. Predation, nutrition, and genetics are all concerns, but all of those concerns combined don't equal the threat of infectious disease.
I bought my first sheep, I think, when I was 7 years old. My dad was a sheep shearer, went all over the country and sheared sheep, so, we grew up with it. I think I was 26 years old when my brothers and we had a first band, started going into the mountains. I'm 66 now. The shearers, it's hard work, but there used to be shearers waiting to take those jobs because you make good money shearing sheep. A very, very important industry. But it's not like it used to be.
In 1995, an outbreak happened in Hell's Canyon.
About 75% of one of the herds of Hell's Canyon died in this outbreak, and there was dead sheep all over the place, and it's like, we've got to do something about this.
It was that outbreak that led to an effort to do research to understand the disease.
Fortunately, I ended up working with Tom at WSU.
I saw the coughing lambs on the hillside, but I wouldn't have recognized it for what it was, like a 100% mortality outbreak in progress. Only knew that because of Francis's legwork.
This syndrome was so confusing for so long because people would find dead sheep that have pneumonia, that have a soup of bacteria in their lungs, and often bacteria that were found in the noses of normal, healthy sheep.
Tom was able to do the work in the lab, and I was able to get the lambs in the field.
And that led to her discovering the linkage between these lamb pneumonia die-off and the initial disease that happened back in 1995. M.ovi is shorthand for the real name of this bacteria, mycoplasma ovipneumoniae. Mycoplasma goes in, damages the defense, and opens up the animal to multiple simultaneous infections with things that are more likely to kill it.
The more I learn about them, the more impressed I am with them. I think they're the kind of animal that, even when you first see them, most people think they're pretty cool, but then the more you learn about them, they get even cooler. They may come down, actually, you know? They may be coming down to get a drink.
Sheep are an important part of the ecology of the canyon. From all we know, they were one of the dominant herbivores in this area. And so having them back, it's not just scenery and tourism, but it's also the health of the environment around here.
Somewhere around 21 ewes and 19 lambs. That's pretty good.
For me personally, it's just seeing them here, knowing they should be here, knowing there should be a lot more of them here than there is. It just makes the canyon complete in a way that it wouldn't be without it. Going way back to the very first study we did, we were looking at lambs just like this, that looked perfectly healthy. They were several weeks old and they were bouncing around. This probably doesn't look any different. It's what's going to happen from here on through the summer that's going to be the big difference.
Coughing, runny nose, droopy ears.
The worst kind of herds have a big outbreak, and it's followed by lamb pneumonia every summer, and that can go for decades.
Adults keep on surviving. These are long-lived animals, but you don't get any recruitment. So year after year after year, every lamb in a population dies. And what can happen then is you get this hollowing out of the age structure in the population.
There was a survey done in 2009, and 64 sheep were actually classified at that time, and that was pretty impressive. It was that winter that lots of sheep throughout the West experienced disease events, and this one was among them.
A once thriving herd of more than 150 animals is down to 26. When they get this respiratory disease, they suffer a really agonizing and a really slow death. It's just really a tough thing to watch. We want to try and get out there and prevent any animal from suffering that we can.
The lambs are born every year, they just don't make it to adulthood. If we don't get recruitment, then the outlook for this herd is not particularly positive.
Every case that we've been able to study where that's happening, we can find at least one ewe that she might be immune herself, but she's still got the live bacteria in her nose. Once the first lamb gets infected, it spreads like wildfire amongst the group of lambs.
Oh, jeez. I think that one's pretty bad. Oh, come on, baby, you got it. This one could be 10 days, but could be tonight. And maybe it could still recover, but that open mouth always makes me anxious. Trying to separate bighorns from domestic sheep, I think, is just critical. It's really, really important in ensuring the health of these herds.
Mycoplasma ovipneumoniae is one of a family of bacteria that live quite nicely with their hosts. But when M.ovi jumps from domestic sheep to wild sheep, the outcome can be devastating for bighorns. It's not that far for a sheep to travel, even 100 kilometers. As they go on these walkabouts, bighorns can come across domestic sheep, and with close contact, bring their diseases back to the herd. There's lots of reasons for wild sheep and domestic sheep to interact. During the breeding season, the wild rams can be especially attracted to domestic sheep. Domestic sheep could get out, or they could be grazed on public land that is prime wild sheep habitat.
So any bighorn sheep that wanders into a domestic sheep or goat operation has a pretty good risk of encountering M.ovi.
This is our fourth youngest band. We got three that got a lot bigger lamb, but this is the fourth, the youngest right here. We counted 2,474. Yeah, they'll be right. They'll sleep on top of that mountain tonight. They'll just graze. Once they get out of here, they just graze. Forest Service loves to have them because the sheep love to eat the skeleton weed. The fire danger they take out of here and the weed, this is the best environmental tools out there. Their sheep been coming here over 100 years. Big outfits, you had them all over this valley. There'd be 20 bands trail right across that mountain where there's one band gonna come across this year. This is a big part of America. It started the West here, and it's about gone.
So it looks like another ewe coming in by herself. Not a good sign. So when we first started, there was lots of lambs and the group was all together, but now we're just seeing single ewes come in. So that's probably an indication that we probably have lost most of the lambs in this herd. It's very, very tough to watch. I've been watching these sheep on these camera traps and that for 8 or 9 years now, and you almost feel like you get to know these sheep on an individual level, and you don't know how aware they are, but it has to be kind of frustrating on their part to have these lambs and grow them to a certain stage and then lose them year after year.
In early '97, get notification that Fish and Game want to bring some bighorns into Hell's Canyon, close to our range, and it made us nervous. We go, hey, we need some assurance here that these bighorns, they come under our allotments. We're not gonna have fingers pointed at us or be blamed for any die-off.
In the 2000s, the Payette National Forest did an analysis to see where the risk was for bighorn sheep, and they determined that it was not compatible to have domestic sheep in the canyon. And that's when they closed the Schertz Brothers allotment.
Here we are, we got these bands of sheep and nowhere to go with them. They took away, obviously, my permits, but they took away my livelihood, who I was. That's what I'd done my whole life, and I had a passion which I don't believe a lot of people can understand for those sheep, for that way of life, for those men working for me, for that land I was leaving. Almost 10 years later, I haven't been back to Hell's Canyon. I can't go there.
Shutting down grazing allotments without good backup plans and timelines for operators is problematic. And, you know, I appreciate that. My dad is a small-scale cattle operator. Moving carefully and in a way that is respectful to the livelihood of people who have multi-generational livestock projects put together, it just seems very important.
I think we could make a lot of progress with increasing communication and education in a non-confrontational way.
We consider ourselves hobby farmers. We have quite a bit of mountain sheep around here. I'd never heard about M.ovi, so I think it's important to educate and let people know if we can do anything to prevent, you know, the death of the wild sheep from our domestic animals. I think it's important.
We started doing some studies on domestic sheep, and we wanted to see if there was anything we could do to reduce the risk at the source.
What's happened with research, in particular by Tom Besser, is that he's found that treating a flock of domestic sheep that have mycoplasma ovipneumoniae with antibiotics appears to clear them of mycoplasma ovipneumoniae. There's a lot of work still to be done, a lot of data to collect. It's pretty exciting. This 5-day treatment is very time-consuming, so it's only realistic for small-scale operations. It basically behooves the farmer to treat and get rid of that, and they'll get better gains, they'll reduce the risk to wild sheep, so everybody wins. That's the hope that we have.
There is no clear solution to this problem, but the goal is to control or prevent these terrible die-offs of pneumonia and to recover viable wild sheep in reasonable numbers in the western U.S.
We're back in Hell's Canyon again now, looking at the rut. Things are looking pretty good. I mean, there are a ton of animals here. It's really exciting. Way more sheep in this particular population than I've seen in years. But in some of the other herds, for example, that herd down in Wendover, where we were in the summer, all those lambs are gone. There hasn't been a lamb on the trail cams there in months. It had all the earmarks of an M.ovi-associated pneumonia event. This year, the lambing season went, pretty well in Hell's Canyon. We had good lamb survival, kind of as we anticipated that we would because of all of the testing for M.ovi that we've done and the removal of some of the chronically infected animals. What we're hopeful for is that in 170 days, we start seeing a bunch of lambs born who are gonna live long lives that are healthy and M.ovi free. We can kind of break out of this disease cycle that's been such an issue.